Good morning, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 4 live stream for this week's AMEX. We've got an amateur at the top of the board, a lot of big names chasing them down, which should make for an interesting showdown slate, some props that we can attack. And once again, with some perfect conditions here for Sunday, it looks like these guys are going to go low. So we'll touch on everything you need to know for today. First off, welcome on in, everyone, whether you're over in the afternoon, over in the UK, whether you're just waking up, it's 6 a.m. over on the West Coast. Grab your coffee. Let's talk a little bit of golf for today and go ahead and end our week with a bang. Yesterday, ended up going out there cashing our stream slip. So congrats to everyone out there that tailed, went out over there on Underdog and made some money. Of course, over there for Showdown, we had another smash slate. End up going out there and making about 2.5x ROI. Let's go ahead, end this with a bang, and hopefully make it another day into the green on both slates. What's going on? Why I win? Good morning. Appreciate the early Showdown streams. I like it too. I feel like mentally sharper in the morning, right? Able to make some of my decisions a little bit better. I've been building my lineups in the morning, and I've seen a pretty good week. So it might be something that we're doing going forward, right? Especially for these West Coast events where it's not going to end until, like 10, 11 p.m. I hate streaming at night when I'm tired. I hate streaming in general when I'm tired. So it works out. It helps me build some better lineups, and I think, honestly, it's a lot more enjoyable. So as long as I get my coffee in me, we're good to go. And we're about halfway done with this cup, so it should be pretty good for this live stream. Which, speaking of, I'm going to have to make it a mission here to make sure I'm actually sipping on that so we can get the whole thing down. But with this being said, let's look at the golf course for today, which we're all going to be on the stadium course, right? So there's none of that madness that we had for the last 2 days where we had to worry about guys playing on either golf course. And if we take a look at the splits here, with Nicholas and La Quinta were almost identical for round 3. And then the stadium course, because of that talent level gap, was nearly the easiest golf course. So if we sort this by your ceiling scores, right, not going to spend that much time on it because it's kind of irrelevant for today. But we had guys like JT at the stadium course absolutely go off. And kind of like I thought yesterday, right, you're going to have some of these guys to take down the GBP. Now, personally, I ended up taking Scotty Scheffler, which you can see he's not anywhere near the top of the best rounds from yesterday. But look at this, right? JT on the stadium course. You had Xander Schauffele down here at the stadium course. Quite a few ceiling performances, right? Even like a Sam Burns shooting 7 under par at stadium. Christian Bezainhout, same thing. Were guys that you had to have for your large field contest. So we were on the right track. I'm at least glad that our process yesterday would have, pushed us towards that optimal lineup. Just unfortunately, right, didn't have enough of a JT or a Xander Schauffele. So there was no takedown on my end, but because our player pool was set up the right way, that's why we went out there and we had ourselves a profitable round. So process was there. Wanted to point that out because I heard a few people in the Showdown industry saying that you couldn't play guys from the stadium course. Well, this should completely throw that off, right? This should completely dispel that myth out there. So the next time we're playing at the AMEX, or if we're playing at a course with a 2-3 course rotation, and there's a course that is maybe slightly harder than the other two, sometimes talent matters, right? Sometimes that talent gap overtakes that, 0.3 shot difference. Because look at this, right? It played 0.3, 0.6, 7 under par. There's a 0.3 shot difference, right? And when you have somebody like a JT or a Xander Schauffele, they are more than capable of making up 0.3 shots. So that's the point I was making here, right? Obviously, if there's going to be an entire stroke advantage between the few golf courses, then maybe we want to shade towards one over the others. But that wasn't the case for yesterday. So just something to learn from, right? Something to remember the next time we get to this golf tournament is maybe not to overreact to some of these course splits, right? Let's take a look at the wind, which I already mentioned, kind of alluded to earlier. Looks absolutely perfect. Your sustained winds are lower than 6-7 miles an hour for the entire day, mostly actually closer to 2-3 miles an hour. And your wind gusts have that same type of apex. So you're going to be looking at the same kind of conditions that we had for the first few days. I would say the one thing that'll be consistent from yesterday into the next round is going to be the overcast. So you can see on here, they didn't really have it as overcast, but for much of the morning and much into the afternoon, they had a lot of clouds out there, which a lot of the announcers were saying led to the lower scoring, right? So maybe that's why the scoring average got the whole way up to 3.67 under. Even at like the Nicholas and La Quinta courses, they played slightly easier as total compared to the first 2 days. A lot of that might have been because of the overcast conditions. And you can see down here in the HRRR, they're calling for that same kind of scenario. The pin locations do look a little bit more difficult out here for Sunday, but because of the overcast, because of the no wind dome-like golf, I don't think it's going to make all that much of an impact. So from the scoring average perspective, I think we're going to see something close to what we had there for round 3. At worst, I think it plays like 3 under par, right? Something like, exactly 3 under, or maybe like 3 1/4 strokes under par. I don't see it getting extremely difficult, right? A lot of that because of the overcast conditions, a lot of that because of just how pristine it's going to be out there. And some of these pin locations, though they kind of look tough on paper, I went through them last night. We're actually going to do that towards the prop side of this video, right? Make sure we can go through that for everyone's information there. There's a lot of bull pin locations, right? Like even hole number 1, there's a slope towards the middle back of this green that'll take all the balls towards this pin. Hole number 2 has a little bit of a backstop behind it. Hole 3, the same thing. There's a lot of slope behind it and to the left. So some of the harder pins here, right? Like even 13, right? You take a look at this. It's, tucked over there in the back right near the water. There are slopes on these greens that make these shots a whole lot easier. So, I mean, for example, at 13, right? You throw the ball into the middle of the green and let it just roll and release into it. All of the slope is going to take you closer to the hole. So while at some golf courses, right, especially ones that are firm and fast, these kind of pins would be troublesome. When it's dome-like golf, when you have absolute dartboards out there, it's not likely to cause that much of a problem. In terms of tough pins, I'd say 18 because the longer hole might be a little bit troublesome. 16, right? That's a par 5, but it is tucked there in the back. But we also have par 5s that are shorter, right? So 11, for example, right, is going to play significantly shorter out here for round 4. So there's a good mix of hard and pretty easy holes, I would say. So good little mix there. Again, I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on the scoring, but because there's no pro-am going on anymore, that's a huge reason why they can make the pins more difficult. That is why they're tucked a little bit more, right? If you were still in rounds 1 through 3, they're not going to change the pins from day to day. But now that the amateurs aren't going to be out there, you're going to see them tested maybe slightly more in that department. So that's all I've got for the golf course review. Again, it's not as crazy of a slate as what we had for the last 2 days, just because there's only one golf course to worry about. So let's hop over to the DFS side and talk through our strategy, which obviously without the different golf courses, it's going to be a little bit different here for Sunday. Jason Day and Sibu Kim was too easy. Good looking out as per usual. Of course, Jose. Let's add to it today, right? Let's go out there and have ourselves a day. Do I happen to know a good tool for made putts distance? You're curious for JT and Schauffele as an example, how many bombs they made. You can just look on the shot tracker, Robert. So go ahead and show you what I'm talking about. They have everything for the stadium course up. So if you're just trying to look at yesterday's round, all of that data is going to be available to you. And I would say the best place to get that, just the simplest place, would just be on the shot tracker. So to give you an idea here, right, for round 3, they're going to have everything up here. You can see here, right, JT made an 8-footer, right? So that's not a bomb. He made a 2-footer there, so that wasn't a bomb. Made a 4-footer, made an 18-footer, right? So that's a little bit longer. Made a 6-inch putt, made a 11-foot putt. It's not a lot of bombs out there for JT. So just bring up the PGA Tour leaderboard, click over their shot trails and you'll get a good idea. That's probably your best bet. There are, shots gained putting metrics that you can look at, but if you just want to know the pure distances, take a look at that. Pins are tucked, I agree, but look at the slopes. We're going to do that later on. They're all easily accessible. And all the real tough ones that are actually, tucked in the back, like over bunkers and that kind of stuff, are short holes. They're like 400-yard holes. Some of them are like 370-yard holes. So it's not going to be nearly as difficult as it might look, honestly. Like that's why we have to look at these pin locations, have to look at the slopes on greens. That's also why you have to look at how long the holes are, because like 7, for example, right? So hole number 7, it's back here in the back left. So I think 7 will be a good example to show you guys here. So hole number 7, right, is only 343. So on paper, it looks real tough, right? It's like, oh, it's a back pin. It's like tucked in there in the back corner. Well, that's because it's a 300-yard hole, right? Now it's probably going to play like 360 out here for tomorrow, but you're having at most a pitching wedge in. And if we take a look at the slope, I'll go ahead and bring that up too here. Let's find hole number 7. All right, it's already going to bring up 7. Sweet. Look at this, right? You've got the slope behind it, which is going to help feed balls to it. Also, if you miss a little bit right, you have that slope that's going to bring you a little bit closer. I'd actually rather have a pin back there than just slightly tucked over the water, right? Like what we had for rounds 1 and 3. So it's the pin locations, they're tricky, right? You got to do a lot of research and a lot of deep diving to really see their character. And it's a whole lot of that, right? The tougher ones are all on holes that are, wedges in, that kind of thing. All right, let's talk through DFS. Let's hop back over to the spreadsheet and talk through some players. So now's the time to go ahead and throw any player questions down into chat. First, with the DFS side, we're going to talk through some of the strategy for today, just some of the top level things to keep in mind. And then afterwards, we'll go through some of my top plays. So if you have any questions on those players, go ahead and let me know. And of course, if you have any questions with the strategy side too, go ahead and throw those down in chat as well. But for Sunday Showdown, our strategy is almost always the same, right? And the only real question mark we have to ask ourselves before Showdown slate, at least on Sundays, is how easy or hard the course is going to play. If it's going to play extremely difficult, the top of the leaderboard matters, right? Placement points at a US Open are a lot more impactful than what we're going to have today, right? If we take a look at some of my projected points over here, now a lot of it is blacked out because it's on the Patreon, right? So that obviously people can't just copy those down. But look at this, right? Xander Schauffele, 58.1 points. Justin Thomas, I've got projected for 60 fantasy points. That's because we're going to get better than a 3 under par scoring average, right? And then when you add, the placement points on top of that, you're going to start to get some pretty crazy scoring out there. So on a slate like this, the placement points mean a whole lot less than what they would for a much more difficult event. And because you're going to get a bunch of rounds where people are shooting like 7, probably 8 under par today, you might not have to have, right, that top 5, right? If some guys in the top 5 go out there and shoot someone like 7, 8 under par, let's say Dunlap, right, runs over the field by shooting 7 under, you're probably going to have him. Somebody like a JT wins or Sam Burns wins, you're probably going to have them. But your other 3, maybe even 4 spots have to be guys that are going low. So it's the kind of slate where you can't completely ignore the top of the board, right? You can't just fade all the guys up there in the top 5, but you probably shouldn't be playing all of them either, right? There's going to be a few that probably drag their feet a little bit, that don't go out there and get to a ceiling round. And just getting to the top 5, or even just holding on to some top 3 placement points is probably not going to be enough to get the job done. And on top of that, the thing that you can add on top of that, right, is I know Dunlap's 27 under par or something like that. I've got him at 63.5% ownership. So obviously an insane amount of attention going to the kid. And even if he were to shoot like -4 and win this golf tournament, he might not be the optimal play down here, right? If he only makes like 4 or 5 birdies, he shoots like a 68, something like that. Even if it's a bogey-free round, all that has to happen is a Tom Hoge goes out there and makes like 7, 8 birdies, and he's going to outscore somebody like a Nick Dunlap. And there's a million names down here, right? It could be a Tyler Duncan that does that, and Alexander Bjork, Vince Whaley. I mean, just if any of these guys, right, go out there and have a ceiling round today, and somebody like Dunlap just goes out there and kind of just has a good day, right? Shoots like 4 under par, something like that. You're going to have the guy that goes super low. So this is the kind of slate where those Sunday placement points mean even less than usual. So you're going to pick and choose a few guys that you think can pop up the board, right? Maybe you think a JT chases down Dunlap, and that's why he's somebody that I'm playing for today. I think that might happen. Then you mix in that 1-2 pieces of chalk and then throw in a bunch of pivots. So that's our strategy for Sunday, right? It's eat a little bit of chalk, throw in a bunch of pivots, and try and bank a lot of those ceiling performances. So with that being said, up here, Xander Schauffele is in position to have one of those ceiling rounds. If he goes out there and he shoots some of the like 8 under par today, he might not win this golf tournament, right? In fact, he's probably not going to beat a Nick Dunlap, right? Starting 7 shots back, but his 8 under par round could easily get him to the optimal lineup, right? That would be in the upwards of around like 60 fantasy points. If you have a streak on there, little bogey-free rounds, might even get closer to 70, 75 fantasy points. And those are the kind of players that I'm looking for. And up top, the ownership's pretty spread out on these top-end options. Scotty Scheffler, surprisingly, is actually one of the lower-owned plays. A lot of that because he's down there at 14 under. Minwoo Lee's also only 9.4% himself. But these sort of players probably aren't getting many placement points, right? So they're not unplayable. If I was playing 150 lineups for Sunday, I'd probably be considering somebody like a Scotty or a Minwoo Lee. The guys I prefer because I'm going a little bit lighter in my exposure, closer to 20 lineups out here for today's action, or the Xander Schauffele's. You could throw in a Patrick Cantlay if you wanted to, that are, reasonably close to that top 5. And if that they go out there, they have a solid day on the greens, are likely going to finish in that top 5. So there are a few of my favorite spent up options that you can take in lineups. If you're taking a piece of chalk up here, my favorite is Justin Thomas. A lot of that because of how he's hitting the ball at this point. Unfortunately, I've got him at 46% ownership. And you can see Sam Burns, right? I've got at 47.2% ownership. I have both in my player pool. I'm also playing a Sam Burns on top of Justin Thomas. And they're kind of my stands on the slate, right? I'm going out there hoping that they can make a run at Nick Dunlop. Maybe one of the two can actually go out there and win the golf tournament and make that 63.5% Dunlop completely unnecessary in GPPs. So I'm taking both of them. I personally think that both are going to make a run at it. I think they're going to make this an interesting event come the final stretch. And even at these kind of ownership numbers, right, you throw one or maybe even both of these players into a lineup, you have the whole rest of your lineup to differentiate, right? So maybe if I'm starting with those two, I don't go to a chalky Siwoo Kim as my third man in, right? Maybe that's where a Beau Hossler comes in handy, right? That's down there at 7.4%. Maybe that's where a sub 10% owned Davis Thompson comes in handy. Tom Hoagie right down here at 5% ownership. It's all about making sure that you have a good balance of those higher owned plays with some of those lower owned pivots, especially down there in like the 6 and 7K range. And that's how you put together a few lineups for today. So JT with his ball striking, with just how efficient he's looked this week, as a player that I'm looking to get exposure to. Siwoo Kim with his track record around this track. If you take a look at the stadium course, he's gained strokes to the field in 7 of his last 8 rounds. These guys with elite level course history are the ones that I'm trying to go after for a Sunday pot performance, right? Go out there, hopefully get a ceiling round, finish in the top 5, and get us to that optimal lineup. Beau Hossler can get hot with the putter. You have somebody like Davis Thompson, another guy with elite level course history that has done some real damage at the stadium course over his last few years. Tom Hoagie, right? Another player that can get super hot with the irons. So I like that for him at $7,100. And then Will Gordon, another guy who's just nuclear hot, right? Is all or nothing when it comes to the showdown slates. Is not afraid to fire a 77, but also not afraid to go out there and fire a 62. So in showdown, right, I want those players with a wide range of outcomes, and especially on a Sunday where you might have a few 7-8 under par rounds. Will Gordon definitely has the firepower to get to that kind of performance, the kind of horsepower necessary to make that many birdies. And then Harrison Endicott would be the last real value play that I would consider on this kind of slate. I've got Endicott in my biggest GPP lineup right now. I've got a lineup, I believe it's in 12th place of one of the large field GPPs. And if Endicott goes out there and has himself a day, I could very well be taking down that contest. So got a little bit of a sweat out there for our main slate stuff. A lot of sweats out there for our outright betting card. So hopefully we can get a few people to come through for us and end it off with a pretty nice week. So that's a strategy. That's what I'm going with out here for Sunday Showdown. It's pretty typical, right? You have to take a few pieces up top and then find your pivots down low to make the ownership work. In terms of putting together lineups, actually, we'll go over any questions first before we go through some lineup construction. Then afterwards, we're going to talk props. So if you're here for the prop side, Underdog and Prize Picks, we'll get to that here in a few. Do I give an advantage to guys who played the stadium course yesterday? I don't subscribe to that theory, Birdie Man. I just don't understand how big of an edge it would be, right? I mean, I think there's some sort of comfort, right, in playing the same course back to back. But is that like a 0.1 shot difference? Is it an entire stroke difference, right, compared to the other guys? I would just say that a lot of the best players, right, were on the stadium course yesterday. So it wouldn't surprise me for somebody from that wave to go out there and win this golf tournament. I know a lot of people have quoted a stat this week, right, saying that like 7 of the last 9 winners, right, have played on the stadium course on Saturday. A lot of that is because of talent level, right? All of the best players are always playing the stadium course on Saturday. So naturally, they're going to win more, right? Naturally, they're going to be the guys that you're seeing hoist the trophy. So yeah, I don't subscribe to that theory. Exactly what you were thinking. A lot of guys like Day are going to be playing stadium course back to back. Okay. Hey, if that's the edge you want to go with, you can go with it. I understand it a little bit, right? It's like, okay, you're comfortable days back to back. Just not something I would do. I would never have thought to check Dunlap if not for you shouting him out on the main live stream. Thank you. It really helped you out with showdowns. Yeah, he's an absolute stud. I didn't get enough exposure myself, Robert, right? I've heard good things about him. I was trying to like take a week off, right? Kind of see what he looked like this week. Then he absolutely smashed. So It's good for you. That's awesome though. I wish I would have taken my own advice on that, right? There's a few of those Corn Ferry Tour guys that I didn't play this week. A lot of them, like Raul Pareda, I played like 2%, did not work out. I wish I would have played 2% Dunlop because that probably would have been enough. Would you bet JT to beat Burns in an 18-hole head-to-head? I would, Tyler. Yeah. JT, the more proven player under pressure. So I would side towards him for sure. I'm assuming the odds are even money on that. If they're even money, I would go towards JT. If there's juice on the JT side, maybe not so much. I might not be as big of a favorite. It is a relatively close matchup after all. But yeah, even money, I would definitely do that. Just sign back up for the Patreon, ready to take it down. Let's get it. Cheers to you. Thank you. And let's get after it. Should be a fun day. Let's talk some lineup construction. So let me bring up Draftkings and show you guys how we're thinking through these lineups. So when we're building for a Sunday Showdown slate, we've got to think about game theory a bit, right? We've got to think about the kind of script that we're expecting to play out. And a lot of my lineups, right, are going to be built off of Dunlop not closing this thing, right? Even if he does close it, right, my implied lineups are going to be going out there and assuming he doesn't go off, right, doesn't have that ceiling performance, which is why I'm almost always starting with a Burns or a JT. Just for the sake of trying to show you guys how to get different here, let's go ahead and throw both of these chalky players in and show you how I'd navigate that kind of lineup to make sure that I'm not too duplicated with the rest of the field. So let's throw JT in there, Sam Burns. In terms of our 8K option, there are a few chalky guys here that I like for today, right? Like a Siwoo Kim, for example. But if we're starting with a JT and Burns, right, I mentioned it might not be the best idea, right, to go out there and take a Siwoo Kim. So maybe rather than going in that direction, we go down here and throw in a Taylor Montgomery, right? A player that has an excellent track record around the stadium course, that can fill it up with the putter, and that most importantly, isn't going to be nearly as highly owned as what you have with the Siwoo Kim. So, starting with two chalky players, right, has consequences on the rest of your lineup, but it's far from impossible to build lineups with that in mind. You could throw a Tony Finau in, maybe even a Jason Day for a little bit of leverage. Down here in the 7K range, right, we don't want to take all that much chalk, so maybe we take a Sam Ryder, who's relatively low owned. And then for our last man in, now we probably don't have to leave salary on the table, but if you really wanted to make sure that you're different, you go down here to $7,100, maybe even $7,000. Pick your favorite play not named Nick Dunlap, and you're going to be pretty good to go. If you were to leave the $200 on the table and take a Nick Dunlap here, I would not feel good about this lineup, right? Taylor Montgomery is still like 10% owned. Tony Finau is still like 7-8% owned himself. So this kind of lineup is going to have a high product ownership, right? You're going to have almost no leverage, right, at three of your different spots. And that's what you want to avoid, right? So maybe you did, did avoid like a Sam Burns up top. Maybe you could throw a Dunlop into this kind of lineup, but I would much rather have a Sam Burns and a JT at high ownership than some unproven amateur, right? I mean, he could prove us wrong. I honestly hope he does, right? I hope he goes out there and absolutely smashes today, just for the sake of his future, right? I mean, it would be pretty cool to see some amateur go out there and win one of his first a golf tournament and literally not even get money out of it. I mean, that's just like crazy to me, but I hardly expect that to happen, right? Pressure is a real thing. I mean, he's still in college at this point. He's got his idol, Justin Thomas, playing with him today, another guy who went to Alabama. I think he's going to feel the moment a little bit. So I'm choosing to take my chalk up top, right, rather than taking a 63% owned Dunlop. And that's how I'm building my lineups for today. Now, if you were playing cash, right, you could take a Dunlop. In fact, I think you probably want to take Dunlop if you're playing a cash lineup today. But outside of that, I'm probably avoiding him. He's going to be 0% in my GPP lineups, especially considering I'm only playing like 20 lineups for today. That's all I've got for the lineup construction. Let's see if there's any last second questions on DFS. And if not, we're going to talk some props. So let's see. Looks like we're good on questions. So let's go ahead and talk some props. So what we're going to do to start off our prop stuff here is look at the pin locations. So I told you guys that we were going to do that earlier, and it's because it's going to have a big impact, and it has a big impact on how I'm attacking this slate. So let's go to hole number one. We're going to go hole by hole real quickly and show you guys what these players are facing. So hole number one's a mid-range par 4. The pin location's over here in the back right. I already said before that you have these slopes that are going to help you out. And any kind of shot that is feeding from left to right is going to get real close to this back right pin. So it's already a shorter hole to begin with. A lot of players have like 9-iron in. And now that it's a little bit more accessible than what you had for round one, I think you're going to see a better scoring average over here in the final day. In terms of our next pin, it's in the back left. This is once again another like mid-range par 4. It's not very long. You have a little bit of a bowl here, right? So you can see just in front of the pin location, there's a slope that'll take you down to where the pin is back here in the back left. You've got a little bit of a berm, a little bit of like a curb back here to the back left, which if you end up hitting a shot that's a little bit too hot, right, might end up stopping you on the green. And then over here in the back right, it's the same kind of thing, right? It's like a little bumper car action, but you got that little swale towards the back right, where if you hit a shot that's maybe running through this back right side, it might end up staying on the green and getting close. So this is an example of the kind of pins that we're going to see today, where even on the longer golf holes, I mean, honestly, I don't think this distance on here is right, by the way. So let's see, how far was shot number 2? 120 yards? So maybe it's, how far was his tee shot? Okay, so this is a shorter par 4. I had my holes mixed up. So this is a shorter par 4 too. So it's not even like a mid-range par 4 like I was saying before. So with all these slopes around it, right, if you miss a little bit short, maybe you have a shot that like comes back with some spin, you're going to get a little bit of help from that little slope right there. And if you miss a little bit long, you can feed it off of the slopes closer to the hole. So once again, not that bad of a pin location. Let's find hole number 3. So hole number 3 is a back left pin. This is the mid-range par 4 that I was thinking of. And you can see it's the same kind of thing, right? You've got this backstop behind it. So any shot that's coming in a little bit hot, you can run it down the slope and pretty close to the hole. So whether you're throwing a dart on there and trying to get it close, or you just run it a little bit past the pin and bring it back, this might actually play easier than the front pin, right? This front pin over here was just over this front bunker. There was not really a back slope that you could use, right? You can see over here, there's that little curb to the right. But now that this slope is directly behind the pin, it's going to be a lot easier to utilize. So that's, once again, not a really difficult pin location, which you're going to see a lot of these. It's strange how they have this set up. So hole number 4 is a front pin, and it's on a par 3. So rather than playing like 180 yards back here to the back, it's a front pin, and you can see the slope is kind of like a bowl here, right? You've got a little bit of slope towards the front and then to the right over here on the left side. And then over here on the right, you've got a little bit of slope going left. So a little bit of a funnel that you have there, and it's going to play shorter too. Hole 5 is a back right pin. So this is a par 5. So obviously this is going to be scoreable pretty much no matter what. This back right pin, I would say, is very similar to what you have with this front right pin. The main issue with this par 5 is the water, right? Anytime you have them tucked over here to the right, you're going to be dealing with this water hazard. The fact that it's a little bit further back into this green probably isn't going to change all that much, because it's only 532 yards, right? It's already reachable to begin with, right? If it's going to play 540, it's still going to be easily reachable for pretty much the entire field. And if you miss over here to the left side, which was the common miss for the first 3 rounds, you're going to have all the green to work with in the world. I would say that the chip shot to this back right might be like slightly harder than what we have to the front right, but it's not a massive difference, right? If this was like maybe a 5 out of 10 in terms of difficulty, the shot to the back right is maybe a 6 out of 10 with the difficulty. So even the quote unquote harder pins, right, aren't all that difficult. Hole number 6 is a par 3. It's over here in the middle right. This is the hardest hole on site, and it's not going to change. It's going to play just as difficult as the first few days. I would say with maybe slightly more danger, because if you miss to the right now, you're in the water hazard, but it's going to play pretty similar to what we saw the first 3 days. Hole 7's a little back left pin. We used this one as an example before. It's already a shorter hole, right? It's only like 370 yards. And then you have these little slopes helping you out. So another pin that's going to play really straightforward. Hole number 8 is a front right pin. So this is a par 5. It's actually, I don't think 8's a par 5. I think this is incorrect. Let me double check on that. I'm like 90% sure that they have that down wrong, but we'll double check on it. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong. Could easily be the case. Oh, no, it's a par 5. I'm definitely wrong there. Okay. Good thing I checked. So hole number 8's a par 5. It's reachable in 2. They have the pin over here to the front right. And honestly, I thought this was a long par 4. And I thought I was going to play a little bit harder because of that. Now that it's a par 5, right, you've got all this room to get up and down out of the bunker. Even if you miss over here to the short right, you're going to have a lot of green to work with to get it close. even better, honestly. I thought that was going to be a tough pin, and ends up being a par 5. Hole number 9 is another par 4. This is a mid-range par 4. The pin for rounds 1 and 2 was extremely accessible, a lot because of this little slope that you have behind it. So this is one of the few pins that's going to play harder, right? It's going to be a little bit longer than what you had for the first 3 rounds. And there's not as big of a slope behind it. Let's go to hole number 10 now. So hole 10 is a little front pin here. This is going to play shorter than what we had for the first 3 days. And you have a little bit of a backstop too. So you're going to see a lot of birdies there. Number 10. Hole 11 is another front pin. This is a par 5. So this is going to play about 30, 40 yards shorter. It is a little bit closer to the water this time around. It was already pretty close to the water, honestly, over there for the first 3 days. But now it's going to play shorter. So if anything, that should be a little bit easier to get a birdie on. Hole 12 is a back middle pin. This is a really short par 4, so it's a wedge, right? It's a little bit tucked back on this awkward little corner, but it's only a 350-yard hole. So that's why, right? They tuck it a little bit more. Let's see. Hole 13 is tucked a little bit close to the water. It's a par 3, so it's over here on this middle left side. This isn't a terrible hole at all. I'd have to say more chance of a water balls, right? So more chance of going out there and getting out of position, but that's not going to impact the birdie production as much, which if you keep hearing me say the word birdie, you could probably tell where we're going to go with some of these props here in a minute. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of birdie props. So this is a 380-yard par 4. Once again, it's a pretty simple pin location over here to the middle left. Hole number 15. Let's see what 15 is. 15 is back middle. So it's like over here shading towards the right a little bit shorter than what we had for days 1 through 3. And I'd say actually slightly easier than what we had there. 16 is a back left pin. This is a par 5. It's going to play a little bit longer than what we had for the first 3 days. And I don't think it's going to change the scoring average very much. Obviously, this is a longer par 5 to begin with. It's going to play probably closer to 600 yards out here for day 4. And a lot of guys were laying up anyways. You had a lot of guys hitting like 40, 50-yard chip shots in. Some people were laying the whole way back to like 90 to 100 yards to be able to spin something off this little ledge. If you end up going forward in 2, a lot of people are missing over here to the right, as that bunker down there is extremely devilish. So if you miss over here to the right, you're still going to have a lot of green to work with to try and get it up and down, right? A lot of room to roll out a little pitch shot. And if you don't go for it in 2, you're going to have the same type of wedge shot, right? These guys were laying up to a number out here on hole number 16, and they'll just take a bigger club, right, to lay up to that same number. So I don't think that much is going to change with 16. Hole number 17 is a front right pin. This is another pin where it's not going to change the birdie production a lot, but because it's not as close to the center of the screen, you might see people that hit it into the water to the right. So this is another hole where I think strokes are a lot more affected than birdie production, because if anything, right, it's a shorter club in hand, right? It's going to play closer to 150 yards as opposed to this 170 number. So on paper, it's easier, but you do bring in a little bit more water risk. And then finally, hole 18 is also kind of close to the water. You have these slopes that are going to help you get it closer. I don't think it's going to impact birdie production all that much. You can see, right, it was tucked over here on the right side with a steep fall-off area just to the right of this green. You saw JT over there yesterday, right, try and go for this pin and get knocked over to the right. Now you have a little bit more room to the left, which I think makes your up and downs a lot more simpler. And it's about the same distance, right, as what we had for days 1 and 3. So once again, I don't think the birdie production is going to change very much over here for hole 18. It's just that if you miss left, it's going to have a whole lot more consequence than what you had for days 1 and 3. So when we hop into the strokes board here, the strokes board I think is pretty fair. I'm going to be avoiding it for the most part, but especially over there in Prize Picks, there are a few birdie props that I really like. It looks like the pins are going to lead to low scoring. We already mentioned before that the weather conditions are absolutely perfect. Overcast, next to no wind out there. A scoring average of probably at least 3 under par. So we can keep all that in mind when going through this board. So where I'm doing a lot of my exposure for today, and where I've put in all my exposure to this point, is on the underdog side. And we'll go through a few of these props here together. Let's see what's going on. Jason says the big guy. What's going on, man? So let's go through this. So in terms of birdie props, did they really take Sanjay off? Wow. these rat bastards are out here moving shit. So last night they had Sanjay up here at 6 birdies. Now for some reason he's not even on the board. I had JT at 6. They moved him up to 6.5. So these rat bastards are really on one today. They must be watching the live stream and just pissed off that I'm about to go and bend them over for like the 4th straight day. Actually, I think we've won in terms of our free plays. We've won like it's either 8 of our last 8 or 7 of our last 8 free plays over here on the prop side. So I guess I understand why they're a little bit butthurt, right? They're just getting screwed over here by our props. I had Adam Hadman and Siwoo Kim under 68 strokes. Both of those have already been bumped to this point, so that's a little bit annoying. All right, so the one prop I've got for right now, we'll find another one for a pair, I assure you guys, would be the Scotty Scheffler under 66.5 strokes. Let me go ahead and bring up Caesars William Hill to show you guys why I really like that prop. And it's not something I've entered myself yet. It's something that I've been eyeing for the last like 4 or 5 hours. Ever since I went to bed last night, I've been looking at this prop, thinking about it. So we'll find a pairing for it here, and I'll find a way to get some exposure myself. But what I wanted to show you is over here in Caesars, right? He's minus 145 for the under 66.5. And if we're going to see a 3.5 under par scoring average, that means he'd have to gain about 2.5 strokes to the field to hit, which sounds like a lot. But for somebody like Scotty Scheffler in this week of a field, that's far from impossible. In fact, I'd say that he gains about 3.5 strokes per round on average to the field. So at least in this kind of field strength, right? Elite tier field, right? He gains closer to like 2, maybe 2.5 strokes per round to the field. But in a field like the American Express, right? Even after the cut, it's closer to that 3.5 number. So let's go ahead and throw in Scotty Scheffler. He's a prop that I've been wanting to take here. And these rat fucks going over here and taking shit off the board is beyond tilting at this point. So let's see. We could take Dunlop at 5.5. The birdie average yesterday was 5.53. So they've got Dunlop projected directly at the average. The only hesitation I have is that he's a young amateur, right? That he's never been here before, that he could be feeling a lot of nerves today. So I'm going to keep that one out of it. I'm considering taking Tony Finau. Now, the reason for wanting to take Tony Finau is that he's a high birdie percentage player, right? He's projected only 0.5 birdies higher than the average. That's why I loved taking a Sanjay M. That's why I loved taking a Justin Thomas today, is they were both at 6 birdies, which was only half a birdie more than the average yesterday. And especially with JT, right? I mean, JT is playing unbelievable golf. He's already one of the top 5 birdie makers on tour over the last 3 years. So it made a whole lot of sense there at 6. But now that they're starting to move stuff around, I mean, like, come on, Prize Picks. Like, what are we doing? I guess they're getting a lot of action on their unders, right? That's pretty evident with what they're doing here. But it's a bummer out here for the live stream, that's for sure. Oh, Dunlop strokes isn't horrible either, but there's a lot of water pins out there, so maybe you avoid that. If anyone's going to avoid the water, right, I trust Scotty Scheffler to do so. So that's another reason why I'm willing to take his strokes prop as opposed to some of the other stuff. I guess if I was going to take something right now, it would either be a Tony Finau and birdies, or it would be a Cantlay or a Xander birdies at 6.5. Cantlay and Xander have made a shit ton of birdies this week. Just to double check, let me see how many they made yesterday, right? Both of them played the stadium course. I know Xander had well more than 7 birdies. I think he made like 8 or 9 on the day. But let's double check on Cantlay. Let me share my screen for you guys. All right, so Cantlay made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 yesterday. And what did his shots gained look like? He lost putting, he lost around the green, but he gained with both ball striking categories. That feels like a bounce back, right? Patrick Cantlay, one of the best putters on tour, was still doing his stuff with the iron play. And let's look at some of the missed putts. 13 feet. Okay, that was a longer miss. Let's see. He missed one from 12 feet. Okay. I mean, he makes a good amount of those. He missed one there from like 15 feet. 12 feet again, actually. He missed one from about 20 feet there. Another like 20-footer. It was a par putt. He didn't get up and down for birdie from greenside. That's not something you see every day. Let's see. What else did he miss? Missed like a 20-footer. He missed like what? Like a 10-footer out there at hole number 1. And the birdies that he was making. Okay, so he made a good one there from 17 feet. Made a good one there too. That was a tap in. That was a tap in. That was almost a tap in. And that was a tap in, pretty much there at 5 feet. So, okay. Cantlay could be a good move. I expect him to putt better, right? That would be the main idea there. And then, yeah, Shoffley made 9 birdies yesterday. That is absurd. Let's see. That was a longer putt. That was a tap in, tap in, tap in, tap in. Whole lot of tap ins for Xander Shoffley. Oh my, another one there. What was that, like 5 feet? Jesus. Xander had himself a fucking day yesterday. Holy crap. That was a longer putt, but yeah, another tap in over here at 16. I'm okay with both of those with birdies, especially because they're elite tier players, even if they're at 6.5. So if we're gonna choose one of the two, I feel like we should take Cantlay, and like that might seem a little bit of like backwards like logic there because Xander had such a good day yesterday. The issue I have with Xander, right, is all of his were hit to like 2 feet. Like it'd be great if he could go out there and do that again, right? Hit all those balls to 2 feet, but you have to think that that isn't likely, right? I mean, he was having the nut iron performance yesterday. Speaking of, what did he do in terms of shots gained? I'm sure it's like a million shots gained approach. Yeah, over a shot gained on approach, really good off the tee, but he gained 2 strokes putting. Cantlay played pretty similar golf, right? At least in terms of his ball striking. He just lost strokes with the putter. And historically, right, somebody like Cantlay is a really good putter, like one of the best putters that we have in this field. So he probably turns it around. So we'll enter it. Fuck it. I wish they had Cantlay at 6 birdies. That was my hesitation out there with it, but we'll go with it. So my limit over here on this Prize Picks account, which I won't say anything about whether there's other accounts that I can use, wink, wink, is $20. So we put $20 on that. That is the max that they allow me to go with. Unfortunately, I'll take down this little sticker on the side to show you guys. They've got my account under absolute lockdown at this point. So taking the logo down so I could show you guys this, I can't even enter a $25 slip. I mean, it's atrocious, right? Maximum entry is $20 right now. For NFL on Prize Picks, they have me at a $5 max entry. It's disgusting. But nothing I could do about that. So we'll go with that for right now. But yeah, like that combination, right? Patrick Cantlay due for a little bit of bounce back form out there with the putter. And then Scotty Scheffler juiced well towards our favor. And on top of that, it's just an absolute baller. Zane Hoot at 5.5 birdies. I mean, I would lean over for sure. I'll say that much, right? I would definitely lean for the over, but he's not a high birdie percentage player. He's not really one of those elite tier guys in that category. So kind of like a Dunlop, I think that's a fair projection, right? Like the step up in talent level, right, from like a Bazane Hoot to these other players is like a birdie per round difference, right? Like for example, Cantlay was like your number 2 birdie maker on tour last year, compared to Bazane Hoot, who I think, and actually we won't even have to think, I'll just bring it up right now, who I think was outside the top 100 in birdie percentage. So I would lean over, right, because I think the average is going to be about 5.5 birdies per round. But I have a hard time wanting to play Zane Hoot for birdies. He's just not he's not known for that. But let's bring up the stats from last year. Let's do our due diligence on it. Birdie or better percentage, and let's sort it by last season, right? So we can get a full sample here. Zane Hoot number 154 on tour, right? So not horrible. It's about a little bit worse than tour average, right? Out there for your birdie or better percentage. So if he's going to be right about tour average, right, you'd probably have him at about 5.5 birdies, like we saw for the average yesterday. Whereas guys like Cantlay are like number 4 on tour, right? I believe in this field he was number 1 in birdie or better percentage. You have guys up here like a Scotty Scheffler, Eric Cole, right? Xander up here. That are all like much better birdie makers. That's why I kind of prefer them, right? They're known for it. They're playing well. They're some of your best players to begin with. But yeah, I don't hate the prop at all, right? I would definitely lean for the overs. The conditions do look right for the taking, but I'm personally going to stick to more of the established prospects. In terms of our underdog stuff, there's not a lot of props I've entered over there. In fact, to this point, I haven't entered anything myself. The main reason being is that their pricing is a lot worse, right? They opened to guys like JT at 6.5 birdies. They have guys like Siwoo Kim at 67 strokes, where he was at 68 strokes, right, on Prize Picks last night. Sam Burns is at 67.5. You have guys like Jason Day, right, at 67.5 strokes. On top of that, the birdie props are also 0.5 higher in a lot of cases than what we have on that side. So maybe not as much value that I like getting to. So you can still take this Patrick Cantlay prop, right? He's at 6.5 on both sites. The unfortunate part is that there's not really stroke stuff that we can take, right? They've got Scotty 0.5 lower, so you'd want to get the best line available over there on Prize Picks, and it's like that for the entire board, right? Even Dunlap's 0.5 lower. JT Poston actually, I think, has the same projection across both sites, but I don't love him at that number. I think he's got a lot of push equity. I think it's a relatively fair projection. So for the most part, I'm sticking over here on Prize Picks. So that's my take on that side. Let me go ahead and bring up Hard Rock Bet, and we'll cap this thing off with a look at some of the two balls. I know we had a question before about JT versus Burns. I'm hoping that Hard Rock Bet has that lineup, because I'd be all about taking JT if it's even money. So let me get signed in here, and I'll bring it up. The security on Hard Rock Bet's great, but it's a little bit annoying. It takes you a second to log in, but hey, it's secure at the very least. All right, so here's Hard Rock Bet. First off, Sean Strickland won last night. That was fucking horse shit. You can see I had Strickland winning by decision. If you watched that fight last night, I completely disagree with that statement. Raquel Pennington by decision was nice. Neil Magny. I don't know how I got that one right. He was a plus 300 winner. Chris Curtis by decision. We had some unders and stuff. It was a good day for the books yesterday. We did a pretty good job over there. But let's do it on the golf side now. Yesterday, our Jaeger over Neesmith matchup ended up winning for us. Our Scotty versus Cantlay one did not. So we went 1 or 2 on these props yesterday. Let's try and make it 100% for this time. So let's see. Do we have a Burns versus JT matchup? Doesn't look like we do. Who do they have JT against? They don't have him up against anyone? Wow, that's kind of disappointing, right? You think that they would have, guys in contention up for these 2-ball matchups, but it doesn't look like we have that. So let's go through a few of the other options and see what we can do. So they've got Tony Finau versus J-Day. That's probably pretty fair. Hadwin versus Sibu. That's a pretty fair one. Both have elite level course history. We've got Xander versus Cantlay. That's a pretty close one. Scheffler versus Sungjae. Scotty should be the favorite there, so I agree with that. But Zane versus Davis Thompson. Yeah, these matchups are complete dog water. Berger versus Wyndham Clark. Yeah, that's another one that I just don't need to get an investment to. Well, yeah, these head-to-head matchups suck. So let's go ahead and take a look at the 3 balls then. And I know they're going to have one, obviously, with our leaders. So maybe we can take a look at that for a potential bet. So we've got Justin Thomas versus Sam Burns versus Nick Dunlop. Obviously, I'm thinking I would take a JT or a Sam Burns here. And just to do a little bit of line shopping, I want to bring up Data Golf here and see what they've got the pricing at different books, because I'm curious to see what they've got for that 3-ball. So let's see. They've got JT at plus 125 on some books. So what was he? Was he plus 125 or plus 120? So he's got the same odds as what he's got on a lot of other big books, but there's no value there. So compared to what they're looking at, they've got all 3 as red down here. In fact, Sam Burns, according to Data Golf, would be the best bet out of these 3. Just not something that I want to place. So we'll avoid that. Yeah, it might not be a day for these 2-balls or 3-ball bets, guys. I don't like what I'm seeing, frankly. Let's see, JT Poston versus Xander and Hadwin. Honestly, if anything, I think it would take a shot on Hadwin there, but going against a Poston and a Xander Schauffele is like playing with fire. Stranger, Kim, and Cantlay. Cantlay is way too big of a favorite there. No thank you. Berger versus Hostler and KH Lee. See, this one doesn't suck. I would take Hostler here if I was choosing. I'm going to throw that one in the cart. And just to do a little bit of line checking here. Yeah, they hate it, but I might still take that. The unfortunate part is that he's plus 162 on a few other books, so we're not getting the best number. So out of principle, I'm going to avoid that. You've got Kirk versus Kim and Norn. No take. You got Finau, Day, and Montgomery. Wow. 3 inconsistent golfers. I'll say that much, right? With these 3 are very, very inconsistent. We'll leave that one on the back burner. That could be a shot to take on like a Montgomery there because of how inconsistent those 2 have been. with the Jason Day and a Tony Finau. Gordon versus Gracerman and Blair. Minwoo's the favorite there. That makes a lot of sense. Wyndham's the obvious favorite there. Actually, what do the odds look like on Wyndham? Where is Wyndham Clark? Do they not even have him on here? Oh, there he is. Yeah, these odds are dog water across the board. Heck, if you look at this board in general, there's only like 3 green squares on it. So the sports books, oh wait, look at that. They have Dunlop as a huge value at, what's the number there? Plus 450. The issue is that you're not going to get plus 450 on him, right? I think his odds over here on this book were way worse. Let's double check on that. They really like Dunlop. That's crazy. Yeah, they've only got him at plus 300. If you're one of the people that has access to DraftKings Sportsbook and you can get Dunlop at plus 450, do that. Now, I don't think he's going to beat a Sam Burns or Justin Thomas, but look at the number difference here. Like, it's like plus 280. It's like plus 300 out there in that book. And then plus 450 on FanDuel and DraftKings. I mean, that's wild. So yeah, if I was going to do anything and I had access to those 2 books, it'd be that bad at plus 450. That's for damn sure. But yeah, nothing we've got on the matchup side, guys. Unfortunately, nothing there that I like. Best of luck out there with all of your exposure for today, whether you're playing Showdown, DFS, outrights, whatever the case may be. A lot of sweats there. We've got NFL on today, so I'll be watching plenty of that myself. Let's go out there and have ourselves a Sunday. Looking forward to next week. It'll be another one of these West Coast events, and all the content coming as per usual. So on top of smashing the like button, also go out there, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of that when it drops. We'll have a course breakdown dropping tomorrow, little DFS and outright video, either dropping Monday night or Tuesday morning, and all the different live streams throughout the week. So looking forward to it. Let's go out there again, end this week with a little bit of a bang, and get after it for next week's event.